Hi, everybody. Welcome to session 4 of the symposium. I'm Dr. Robert Harmon, chair of the Department of Physics and Astronomy. And I have the honor of hosting 4 fine students here giving their presentations. Rock Jones would like to say a few words. And so we will start with that.
It's a pleasure to welcome you to the annual Patsy Belt Conrades Summer Science Research Symposium. This symposium is funded by a gift from Nancy Schneider in honor of her classmate, Patsy Belt Conrades. Each year, we are pleased to present the work of students who have participated in the Summer Science Research program. That research often happens in laboratories on this campus, but it also happens in laboratories in other parts of the country and even sometimes in other parts of the world. This year, much of that research happened virtually, and our presentation this year comes virtually as well. I hope you will enjoy the opportunity to see the amazing research undertaken by our students through this work. One of the hallmarks of Ohio Wesleyan is its commitment to undergraduate research, particularly in the sciences. And that hallmark has been recognized, including in the recent National Science Foundation doctoral completion study, which found that Ohio Wesleyan students, graduates, are in the top 1% in the country of students who complete degrees in the biological sciences and go on to earn doctoral degrees. We're pleased to welcome you today and to see the work of our students at the annual Summer Science Research Symposium.
Okay, thank you, President Jones. Next, we'll have the students introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to their presentations. I do want to remind the students that we've got a strict timetable here, so you have 3 minutes for your talk. I'm going to be timing you with my phone, and if you hear it going ba-dink-a-dink, 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 then it's time to stop and yield to the next student to be fair to everybody. So we'll have you introduce yourselves in the order you present, and then we'll have Kaito begin with the presentations, but we'll also have Kaito begin saying who he is, and then we'll just go down the line.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kaito Iwasaki. I'm an astrophysics major. We'll be talking about the research we did over the summer.
Whoops, careful, Kaito. So first we're going to introduce ourselves, and then I'll have you give your presentation. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, should we introduce Sakshi again?
I'll introduce myself. Hi, my name is Sakshi. I'm an astrophysics major. I'm a junior this year, and I worked on my research project this year with Kaito and Dr. Harmon.
I'm Dave. I'm also a physics major, and I'll see if I can do it in 3 minutes. Every time I practice, it's been 4, so we'll see.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah, and I am a junior this year. My majors are mathematics and economics, and I have a minor in finance. During this summer, I spent 10 weeks doing research on statistics with Dr. Linder from the math department.
Okay, all right, Kaito, go ahead and give your presentation.
Okay. What we did was basically taking images of a star called Yellow Pegasi and imaging star spots on the surface of the star. Star spots are regions of a star's surface where temperature is lower than the rest of the surface. We did this to understand how star spots are changing their location and sizes for years. Yellow Pegasi is 79 light years away from us, and so because it is so far, we cannot directly image the surface of the star. So we use indirect techniques to get images of the star. But before we get into the details about it, let's briefly explain how spots are formed and how they behave. Star spots are cooler, darker region of the at the outer portion of the star with strong magnetic fields inhibiting the convection within the star. Convection is a circular motion of plasma within the star by which heated plasma ascending and cooled plasma sinking. While convection is a primary way to transport energy at the outer portion of the star, inside the spots, this convection is highly suppressed. This occurs due to a combination of 2 phenomena, flux freezing and magnetic tension. Flux freezing occurs when magnetic fields are embedded in the highly conductive medium such as plasma. Considering magnetic fields passing through a highly conductive wire with nearly zero resistance. Ohm's law says if the resistance within the loop is zero, then there's no voltage in it. Since the resistance of the wire is nearly zero, its voltage has to be zero. Then according to Faraday's law, if there is no resistance in the loop, then magnetic flux has to be constant. The only way to tell this is when magnetic field lines are stuck into the loop and carried with it. And because stars consist of highly conductive plasma whose resistance is almost zero, it plays a role to make this phenomena take place. When the star's plasma is moving, magnetic fields are also moving with it. This is why we call magnetic flux frozen into plasma. And when those powerful magnetic fields exert forces into particles in plasma, the second important phenomena called magnetic tension arises. When the particles making up plasma move with strong magnetic fields, the magnetic forces exerting on them become very strong. This makes magnetic fields so stiff and hard to bend. So when plasma tries to move in the strong magnetic fields in the way to twist field lines, strong magnetic tension is produced to prevent lines from bending. Since above star spots, magnetic field lines are directed vertically upward, the plasma can barely move horizontally. Convection is the most efficient way to transport energy near the surface of the star, but convection requires sideways motion of the plasma. And in this case, convection below spots cannot happen due to the restriction of sideways motion. Plasma energy supplied to this region are also restricted, and therefore making the region cooler and darker than the rest of the star. This is where we see star spots.
So how do we detect these star spots? We certainly cannot see the surface structures through a telescope because they just look like a pinpoint in the night sky. Well, as the dark spots of a star are carried into and out of view from the Earth by a star's rotation, the star's brightness varies. We measured these brightness fluctuations. We took digital images using a CCD camera and used 4 different colored standard precision photometric filters, namely blue, visual, red, and infrared filters. We then compared the brightness of Pegasi to the known brightness of comparison stars which have a constant brightness. As you can see in this image, the star in the center is Pegasi and the other 2 are comparison stars. The reason we use comparison stars is to eliminate the effects of the atmosphere. To reduce systematic and random errors, we performed dark subtraction and flat fielding, which is together what we called image calibration. Next, differential aperture photometry was performed. The program AstroImage-J essentially adds up the pixels in an image to give us a brightness magnitude. We plotted these stellar magnitudes that we obtained from photometry as a function of the rotational phase for each of the 4 BVRI filters. The rotational phase tells us where a star is in its rotation. In other words, if a star has completed, for example, 23.4 rotations since an arbitrary starting point, its rotation phase will be 0.4. The reason that the y-axis is in reverse here is because smaller numbers signify a brighter star. This plot is from our 2020 data through the B filter, and this is for the V filter, this is for the R filter, and this is for the I filter. I will quickly skim through the data from 2014 to 2019. After we plotted the light curves, we used a program called Light Curve Inversion, which was developed by our mentor, Dr. Harmon, that indirectly deduces surface structures of stars. In conclusion, we noticed that star spots were more prominent, and there was more variation in the brightness of Pegasi this year. And it was dimmer this year than it was in the prior years. Thank you.
Okay, Dave, you're up.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Dave, and I worked with Dr. Trees on the synchronization of locally coupled adjacent junction squid arrays and external magnetic field. So very briefly, what a adjacent junction is, if you take two superconducting electrodes and you separate them with a thin insulating barrier, the supercurrent, which flows with no resistance, there'll still be some of that in the insulator, even though it's not a superconductor. As long as the current is less than the critical current, which is the maximum supercurrent the barrier can support. Any current beyond that will be a regular current, but this duality of regular current and supercurrent creates some very interesting effects. If we put this junction in a loop of superconducting material, we get what's called an RF squid. If we put the RF squid in an external magnetic field that's uniform across space, it's the same everywhere, but it's not constant across time, it's sinusoidal. Faraday's law that Kaito mentioned briefly tells us that there will now be a current through the loop, and this current also creates a magnetic field because it's going around a loop, and the flux, which is the magnetic field times the area of the loop, will be from the external field and from the field created by the current around the loop, and it's this total flux that we measure. Here is a plot of the flux through one squid. You can see that it's become entrained to the sinusoidal oscillations of the driving field. The dimensionless flux F is the flux divided by the flux quantum. It's just a way to make it dimensionless so we can change it quickly in a computer program. Dimensionless time tau is time scaled by the characteristic frequency of the squid. If we take a squid and we put a bunch of them in a one-dimensional line, we get an array. You can either have an open boundary array, like is depicted here, where the two ends are actually the ends, and they only have one neighbor, or you could have a periodic boundary, which means the two ones on the ends are actually neighbors of themselves, and it's like a big loop, and that's what Dr. Trees and I mostly looked at. Each individual squid creates its own magnetic field, which extends outwards as fields do, but it gets weaker. So we say that neighboring squids are coupled because they interact, but nearest neighbor squids are not really interacting because it's too weak. Now here's a plot of 4 different squids, and they all start with different initial conditions, but as you can see, it doesn't take very long for them to quickly become entrained to the external magnetic field together. And here is much further in time, and all the oscillations are identical, which makes sense because it's identical squids, and the damping is non-trivial, so there's nothing really crazy going on. A really interesting finding we had is that the coupling of the squids from the inductance actually had an inverse effect on how stable the synchronization was. That is, if we knocked one of these squids out of synchronization, will the others pull it back into sync? And we found that the more coupled the squids were, actually the less likely the squids were able to pull rogue squids back into synchronization. And it's not something we expected, because we would think that the more coupled they are, the better they could do this, but it's actually a different kind of coupling, which was very interesting.
Thanks, Dave. So now we have to give Hannah her chance to speak.
Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, okay. So this summer, I spent the summer with Dr. Linder researching the estimation and inference for correlation under censoring. So in statistics, censoring is a condition in which the value of an observation is only partially known. In many clinical and industrial settings, data are just subjected to censoring. However, widely used conventional statistical methods, such as the t-test, do not take censoring into account. So our study zoomed in and studied the effect of censoring on one of the most frequently used estimation methods, Fisher-Z transformation. In statistics, Fisher transformation can be used to test the hypothesis about the correlation of the population, which we will later refer to rho, by applying the fact that the sample correlation, which we'll later refer to R, is approximately normal. In order to see the effect of censoring on this method, we started out by constructing confidence intervals through the Fisher transformation. So long story short, we generated random samples whose sizes varied from 10 to 50 from bivariate normal distribution, sorted them in order, left censored them, recorded the R's, transformed the R's with the Fisher transformation, then finally constructed the confidence interval when alpha is 1%, 5%, and 10%. We repeated the whole process 100,000 times and found out that the confidence intervals for the row constructed through the Fisher transformation degrade very rapidly, rendering this method inappropriate. So we made attempts to fix the problem. Our main idea was to rescale and reshift the normal distribution approximation in order to get a better fit. Hence, we constructed 2 regression models, each with 11 predictors of combinations of M, P, and rho for the mean and standard deviation of after transformed R's. We also repeated this process 100,000 times. So finally, we constructed confidence intervals for the rows through this updated model. Here is the comparison of the confidence intervals converges between Fisher method and the newly developed method in this study. And this is the case of 95% of confidence intervals. And the red line is the modified version, and the blue one is the original Fisher method. As you can see, although the prediction of the coverage using the developed method, it's still not at 95% constantly, we successfully improved the consistency of the coverage, raised the coverage for some degree, and provided some interesting insights for future researchers. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you all very much for your wonderful talks. So we have a little bit of time for questions. So if anybody would like to type a question into the chat box, I will ask it. While people are typing, I will ask, and you can all have a chance to briefly say, how has your experience swayed or reaffirmed what you're looking to do after Ohio Wesleyan? So let's start with, we'll go in reverse order. Hannah, how about you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how has your experience changed what you want to do later after you graduate, or reaffirmed what you thought you wanted to do?
I wanted to do research. I want to go into the research field right after undergrad, and this confirms my passion for the research, like going to the research field, because I really genuinely love the whole process of research. And yeah, that's
okay.
it.
Very good. How about you, Dave?
I had a lot of fun. I'm really excited for grad school to do like really more self-directed research and really interesting material.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, Sakshi, what about you?
I also had a lot of fun, and I'd never done any research before in astrophysics, but this really confirms that I do want to stay in this field and go to grad school and continue on the research path.
Terrific. How about you, Kaito?
Yeah, this experience was so exciting. So yeah, and also I learned like how not self-studying, but kind of self-studying is so exciting than learning in classes. So I definitely want to go to grad school after undergrad.
Very good. Okay, we do have a question for Dave. Do you have any thoughts about why increasing the coupling decreased the entrainment of the Rho-Josephson junction?
Right. So it's because of the kind of coupling it is. It's not like classically if you put metronomes on like a moving thing, they'll come together. It's not that kind of coupling. What's actually happening is that the squids are interfering with each other's entrainment to the field. They're each trying to throw each other off. So the more coupled they are, the more strongly they can mess with each other. They're not actually helping.
All righty then. Okay, well, we are at 20 minutes, and so that's our session. So I'd like to thank again our speakers for their wonderful presentations, and I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. I know that the students really appreciate having folks come for their talks, and I hope that you all learned something and that it was interesting for you. So thanks again, and I guess we'll bid you adieu.